Hello, 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 and welcome to a brand new episode of Three Drams. As always, I am your host, Potstove Matt, also known as Matt Healy, and I am delighted to have you here, guys, because this is going to be a fantastic episode. This is a brand new Three Drams takeover that we have with the guys in Boan Distillery, and we are trying their three new Irish whiskies, which have been distilled in the distillery, coming out under the Boan name. These are the first whiskies that are coming out under the Boan name, and it is a trilogy of whiskies. So that is why we have a fantastic takeover with the founder, one of the co-founders and family members, Mr. Peter Cooney. Many of you will know him. Many of you will know Boan Distillery, but for some of you sitting at home or watching back after the fact, it'll be the first time trying these whiskies. I've held off trying these whiskies because I knew we were doing this takeover. I'm going to be trying them with you live on air as we go through them. As always, I want to say a very big thank you to the guys at Irish Malts and Three Drams. There's a great team there that put all this together. As I always say, I just show up to do the fun part and talk to you guys. This, of course, is where we have the flavor makers and creators. So if you have any questions, ask them in the comments, because this is where you get the time to talk directly to us in the comments section with the founders, people like Mr. Peter Cooney, who is there on the ground every day in Boan Distillery. I do want to say hello to everyone in the comments section already. I'm seeing our German contingent are strong and well. I'm seeing Tina coming in from Berlin and Fushka Kev coming in from Rheingau. So a very big hello to you guys. And we do have our friends coming in from Clare. We know we have the Walking Club down in Schneem. We have always a good contingent coming in from Dublin as well. To those who are watching back after the fact, I know we have some very loyal followers in Western Canada, in Brazil, as well as in Japan. Hello to all of you guys. Delightful to have you. I hope you really enjoy these whiskies. If you're not a member or subscribe to Three Drams, this is the pack you get every month. It comes directly to your door. You get three fantastic whiskies that look just like this, and your very own tasting card that tells you exactly what's on them. If you are a Three Drams subscriber, then at 8:45 you're going to get an email straight to your inbox where there will be a discount on each of these whiskies individually, and then also a discount for buying them all together. So they'll be able to go straight to your door. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and this is your chance to talk to the flavor makers and creators, and that this evening is Mr. Peter Cooney. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up, this is Dram Ivor 1. This is the Boan Single Pot Still Marsala cask, and I am delighted to welcome co-founder Peter Cooney. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Sláinte, Matt. Great to be back.
I'm delighted to have you. So for the people sitting at home with the glasses in front of them, I know we're going to do a lot of talking this evening, but I am eager to get this first whiskey in the glass. So I'm going to pour it into my festively themed Whistler glass. And have this with me as we chat away. I suppose the people who are watching the show are going to know who Boan Distillery are. Obviously, a distillery based in Drogheda, County Meath, not Louth. But this is spirit that you guys have distilled yourself, and this is the first release under the Boan name. So really what I want to ask you is, what was it like choosing a whiskey to release under the Boan name as opposed to the Whistler name, and how did you end up with these three whiskies?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's like 10 years in the making. So when, 10 years ago, we decided to build a distillery, and we got a little sidetracked along the way. We were busy making cider and beer. Then eventually we turned on our stills. But prior to that, we were making the Whistler brand, which essentially is an independent bottler brand. And that gave us a lot of time to play with all the different types of whiskey except single pot still, and play around with a lot of different casks. So by the time we came to Boan, we had a fair idea of where we were going and what we wanted to do. Now, it's always evolving, but it's brilliant. So a lot of work. On the 21st of June, the summer solstice, we launched our three whiskies. And since then, it's been all go. So we currently export to 80 markets around the world with the Whistler. So Boan is now in 30 markets around the world. We're shipping our US product next week. So we're very busy spreading the good Boan word around the world. So I'm doing lots of these tastings and lots of travel, and we're sending our distillers all over the world. So it's a really exciting time in Boan.
I would say so. What, I suppose, being protective of a brand like Boan and choosing the whiskies that go in, why, we have Marsala of PX and we have Madeira cask, in an overarching theme, we will go into the whiskeys themselves. What made these stand out over your bourbons or your, Olorosos or, the Calvadoses that you're already familiar with the PX range, or sorry, the Whistler range?
Yeah. Well, three's the magic number, first of all. So we try to do things in threes, and we always try and launch products for Boan in the solstices, soon to be the equinoxes, so hence the summer solstice. PX, that's the last whiskey we're going to taste. So we have a product called PX I Love You. You're very familiar with it. And literally, it's not named after the movie. It's named because we love Pedro Jimenez wine. So that was always going to be a clear runner for us. And we had laid down a lot of Pedro Jimenez casks. So I suppose we were always going to have a PX. We just didn't know what it was going to look like. And the makeup of that is Oloroso and PX. And then the Madeira, we did some very, very exciting collaborations with Justino's Madeira. So when we get onto that whiskey, we can delve a bit deeper into that and talk about those stories. And then the Marsala, we do have a Whistler single grain called Mosaic, which won the world's best single grain probably about 2 or 3 years ago. So we would had a lot of experience with Marsala casks and dealing with Marsala producers. But, that's our three whiskeys. That's our first foot forward. We do have an awful lot in the background. And, when it's all ready, that will all come out. But I suppose we were putting our best foot forward with all the stock that we had. We've laid down about 20,000 casks to date. And obviously we could only work with the stock that was mature, that we can legally call it single pot still whiskey. And these were natural choices for us at the time. And we felt that they all worked very well. They're all fortified wine casks. We love fortified wine casks. It really delivers the sweetness, lots of color, lots of fruitiness and flavor. And I suppose that's how we came about it. Now, we did have a wide selection of casks to choose from. And when we talk about each one, you'll see the breadth and depth of the cask work that created these whiskies that we had to draw from. It wasn't just bourbon and Oloroso. So that's it. And you've been to our warehouses, Matt. It's a wild experience to walk through the Boan warehouse and just see the breadth and depth of all the different casks, sizes and wines and spirits. And it's wild. One day we will have a visitor center open, hopefully next year, so everyone can come and see. But for the lucky few that have been there, they know what I'm talking about. It's always a very interesting experience. And to be able to taste from the cask, if I had my way, I would bottle all my whiskeys at cask strength. But I just, not everyone's into cask strength whiskey as much as myself and yourself are.
Yeah, true. And funnily enough, I haven't been in the Boan warehouses. They weren't built and they weren't open the last time I was there. The brewery had been turned into a warehouse, but I have not actually been in actual warehouses. But speaking of different things, this is the single pot still new make that many people would be familiar with from Boan. So this obviously was a product for a very long time, the Boan newborn new make spirit. Are these whiskies a follow-on from that? Are we using the same mash bill? Because I know Boan obviously has a wide range of different flavors it produces through mash bills.
Yeah, so that little bottle there is a 200 ml, and we call that our newborn. And the reason that came about was we entered our new make into the World Whiskey Awards in 2019, I'm going to say, maybe 2020. And it actually won the world's best new make against 1,000 distilleries all over the world making, rye whiskey, bourbon, all kinds of new make. And we were just completely blown away. And we were inundated with emails saying, we want to buy a bottle. And the bottle didn't exist. So we had to create a product to satisfy all of these inquiries. And that's how the Boan newborn came about. But the mash bill in that, because we're a single pot still distillery. Now we do make a bit of malt and a bit of apple brandy, but predominantly we make single pot still. The mash bill for that is 40% malted barley, 55% raw barley, 3% oats, and 2% rye. And there we go. So that mash bill is in these whiskies. When we first started, we commissioned our stills on 50-50. And then we did 60-40, as in 60% malt or barley and then 40% malted barley. And then this interesting character that should have been, he probably should have been born in the 1800s, arrived on our doorstep by the name of Fionn O'Connor. And he asked us for the key of our distillery to do this little project of his called the Vintage Mash Bill Project. And that's when we went a bit crazy and wild and created an awful lot of other different mash bills. And a lot of the learnings from that have gone on to create, I think to date, we've done about 50 different types of mash bills, varying degrees of malted barley, raw barley, oats, wheat, and rye. And as you know, Matt, a lot of these mash bills are non-GI compliant, so we can't legally call them single pot still. We can call them Irish whiskey. But the rumor on the street is that the law will be changing soon to accommodate these new type of mash bills. Now, I have been saying that for about 3 years. I'm going to keep saying it until it actually happens, but I think it could be around the corner. Who knows? I know you're certainly talking about it a lot over the years, and flying the flag for the change of the GI.
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, let me pull back up the image of whiskey number 1. This is the Boan single pot still Marsala cask. It comes in at 47% ABV. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the whiskey that's in the glass then? So what mash bill was used, and what was the cask regimen for maturing it?
Okay, we'll go a bit deep because I know the people listening probably like a bit of detail. So the makeup of this whiskey, there's 7 cask types in this whiskey, and it's a mix of mash bills. We would have had some of our 50-50, 50 malted barley, 50 raw barley, then our 60-40, 60 raw barley, 40 malted barley, and then our core mash bill, which is what we still make all day, every day, which is the one I mentioned, the 40 malt, 55 raw, 3% oats, and 2% rye. So essentially, we used all of those casks would have been bourbon casks initially for about 3 years, and then not all of them. Some of them we finished in Marsala Superior and Marsala Fine casks. And then we also have an element of full maturation Marsala casks. So to give you the breakdown, 6% is Marsala Fine finish. So it would have been bourbon and then finish in Marsala for a year. Then Marsala Superior. And the Marsala house that we worked with is Canteen de Vinci for these particular casks. And they were Quercus Petraea, which is French oak. Then we have Marsala full maturation, 11%. So that would have been a 50-50. And those casks would have come from Florio in Sicily. They're the largest producer of Marsala in Sicily. I was since speaking to one of the founders of that, and they don't sell casks anymore. So we were very lucky to get them back then. And then there's 19% bourbon in there, 11% Oloroso full maturation, and then 7% Neoc, which are these casks called New Era of Oak. They're kind of like an STR, so it's like a rejuvenated cask where a cooperage will take a wine cask, break it down, shave a few mils off the inside to take away some of the red dye and tartaric acid. Then they assemble it and then they toast it for 90 minutes. So you get like notes from a virgin French oak cask, but also hints of the Bordeaux wine that was previously in it. So it's quite a complex blend. Andy, our head blender, struggled with this whiskey, to be honest. The PX was golden from the start. The Madeira, we had a lot to play with. But with the Marsala, it was very dry. These 3 whiskies, we wanted to create, we didn't want them to be tasting the same. We wanted them to taste very different. So the PX is the big sweet bomb. The Marsala is the fruity one. This is the dry style whiskey. So if you like your dry whiskeys, this will be the one for you. So that's the breakdown of all the cask work in there. So
right,
7. Yeah.
So sláinte. I'm going to have a little sip from now.
Sláinte. Natural color, non-chill filtered, which is very important. Hence 47%. You'll get away with 46, but to be honest, we have had issues sometimes. So 47 was a safer bet for us. It's also 7's a lucky number. There's also 7 of us in our family. And my dad was also born in 1947. So as you know, we do like numbers, Matt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I like the grain, the mash bill still comes through. Like I can still taste that stereotypical pot still mash coming through on the palate, mixed in with all the different flavors, which is still very, very, very pleasant.
Yeah, so lots of oak spice, hay, honey, and citrus. And the hay is an interesting one. So here's one of the single bottle cartons. So we actually have a field of barley. You can kind of see here as well with the corn flour. So for the three whiskies, from a packaging point of view, we took the three components of how to make a whiskey. So you have your grains, you have water, and then you have wood. So the Marsala represents barley or grains. The Madeira represents water. And then the PX represents wood. We tried to fit in yeast, but it's hard to make yeast look sexy. So we left that out. So they're the three components, hence the three whiskies of the trilogy. But what do you think?
I really like like you said, it's on the drier side of the palate. Mm-hmm. I love that a lot of that grain is coming through, that kind of like dry cut hay in that sense. There's a little bit of kind of honey, maybe a citrus peel in there as well, which I'm really enjoying. Yes. It's really nice. I mean, the fact that it's first release from Boan. Obviously, there's limitations what age it can be based on the distillery's age, but I think it's a really, really well-rounded, really mature tasting whiskey, which is very enjoyable to see, especially sorry, fly annoying me, especially to see for the new distilleries to be able to release good quality pot stills at a price that people can afford. It's not 150, 200 euro for a pot still whiskey, which is very nice.
Yeah, for 59.95. So that was important too. So we didn't want to, be too expensive, be unreachable, and that's one of the things I suppose we learned. The Whistler was always an affordable and accessible brand, so we wanted Boan to also be accessible and not 100 euros plus, because that's not just fair for the consumer. So we want people to drink our whiskey.
Absolutely. Alan says it's a great dram with a wonderful sweet and spicy mouthfeel. So I think definitely have some happy imbibers in the comment section. For having 7 casks, I suppose in the blend, does that make it harder on the back end for you guys doing? You say the Whistler sold in 80 markets. Does it make it harder for you to have all the stock in the background to make sure that you have it there for continuation, or did the blends change as time goes on?
They will change as time goes on, because like the whiskeys, this is about a 4-year-old whiskey, 4 and a bit. The oldest whiskey in this is probably 4.5 years old. The youngest maybe 3.5. But having all those different casks, we can pull different levers when we're creating our blends. And there's lots of tricks of the trade to how you can create consistency as they grow, and how we actually rack back slowly with water, bring out flavor. So the next batch of this, which we were bottling for the USA tomorrow, we actually had these big butts, the Marsala butts, sitting by the window, and they were getting a bit of sun. They were very dry and oaky, but for some reason, sitting by the sun, a lot of the oak spice has actually dumbed down, and a lot of the fruit notes have actually come out. So as you know, the whiskies change over time, and you kind of have to choose them at the right time, when they're peaking or when they're at the bait. It depends what you're looking for. But is it repeatable? Yes, it is, because we'll be able to adjust all of these levers to create the next batches, and they will get better with time. It's a 4.5-year-old whiskey. So if you can imagine what this will be like when it's 10 years old, it'll be absolutely stellar.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, we are going to move on to dram number 2, but we're going to change the order a little bit, just because I know we're keeping your favorite to last. So this is, if you have a pack in front of you, this is dram number 3. This is the Madeira cask, also bottled at 47%, which is officially dram number 3. We're doing it second. It's fine. This happens. We're doing it. We're calling an audible, as the Americans would say.
Sometimes you get the order wrong. You just got to roll with it. Yeah, we're going for number 3. I'm just going to grab something quickly.
Yeah, I'm just going to pour mine into the glass here. As I've said before, in the very first episode, I pre-poured all my whiskeys, which was 46 episodes ago. Pre-poured my whiskeys, and I was accused of having better whiskeys than were in the pack. So ever since I opened the bottles in front of everyone, pour them in. And I've done that 46 times up to now. Peter, what have you got in front of you?
Good hustle. It's nice to give the whiskey a bit of air, though. You know, I'd pour them all now and just let them all sit there, and you can go back to them. They do change.
Well, I'm unscrewing the final one. I'll pour it there and let the air out of it then as well.
And you know, if you want to put a drop of water in there, go for it. You know, maybe ice, but maybe not in front of me. We're not going to judge you. But water does open it up. As I was saying, I prefer to be drinking all my whiskeys at cask strength because you get the maximum flavor at cask strength. But whiskey number 2, which is number 3 in your yes, is the Madeira. And this actually came about. We created a product called, I'll show you to you here. There's a Madeira house called Justino's. And Madeira is an island in the Atlantic Ocean. It's Portuguese. It's a volcanic island. And they make these amazing wines. And I did this collaboration with them where they actually, if you can see this here, sun and the moon. So they actually gave me 2 casks of Malvasia Madeira, which was in these Quercus Robur casks for 20 years. And they bottled it and left it in their cellar with no label. And they sent the casks to me, and I put a 20-year-old whiskey into those casks and created this one here, which represents the sun. If I could straighten this up, represents the sun. So we matured that for 18 months, and then we bottled the 2 casks separately. So this is 2 single casks. And then I sent the labels to Justino's, and they bottled the Madeira. And basically this pack tells the story of the sun and the moon and the passing of time. And basically we had a lot of fun doing it. And I really got to know the guys very well. And it turned out wonderful. These are available on Irish Malts, I believe, and Bowen Distillery. They're €1,000 a piece. There's only 1,000 of them. And if you have some spare cash lying around, I would urge you to get them. They're fantastic because you can taste them side by side. You can taste the wine and you can taste the whiskey. So that's what we created. And, you know, it kind of relates back to Bowen a bit. Everything we do is all about aligning ourselves with the sun and the moon. Even on our quirks here, we have our Bowen Distillery, but we say land, sun and moon. We're all about rooting ourselves into the Boyne Valley. I've forgotten to talk about the bottle, but I will get to that in a minute. But we'll talk about the Madeira first. So in doing this product, I became great friends with Justino's, and I managed to source some amazing casks after this. And basically, with this whiskey as well, there's 7 different cask types. Just so happens, you know, 7 is a lucky number, as I was saying previously. Just to go through what the cask types in this are, so the casks I got were vintage casks. They were held single varietal Madeiras. So one was called Bowl, that's a grape that was from 99. 26% of this whiskey was made up of that. Initially matured in bourbon for 3 years and then finished in this Madeira cask. That brought sweet and decadent notes. Then we had Tinta Negra from 1998. 35% of the blend was that, fruity and sweet. Then we had Tinta Negra 00 from 2000, 22%, fruity and floral. And then we had Cercial, which is another grape variety, but more so on the drier side, whereas Bowl and Tinta Negra are more on the sweet side. So we had 2006 Cercial, dry and spicy, 2000 Cercial, dry and floral, and then 1998 dry and woody. And that was like 4% of each, and then 3% bourbon. So that's the makeup of this whiskey. And it was really, really a lot of fun to make because we had all these amazing Madeira casks that we were finishing our bourbon matured malt in. And we were able to pull from all these flavors of dry, sweet, and medium, and salty. And it's a volcanic island. So it's kind of similar to Tokai, where you do get those minerality notes coming through as well. So that's our Madeira cask release. And the Madeira represents water, which also pays homage to the Boyne River, created by Boann the goddess, and also the water that surrounds the Madeira Island, the Atlantic Ocean.
Fantastic. Well, sláinte again.
Sláinte. So this one is a little bit sweeter. It's floral. You can get the minerality notes because all of those wines are grown on volcanic soils. Stone fruits and citrus. Peaches and cream is a big one for me. And obviously, because they're initially matured in bourbon, you're going to get your classic bourbon notes of vanilla and coconut and honey, all that wonderful stuff. Lemon oil. Yeah. So it's a very elegant whiskey.
It's very fruity.
Yeah.
A lot of like fleshy fruit in there, rather than you're not your dried fruits. You're not into your like cherries, but your peach, like you said.
Yeah, stone fruits. Yeah.
There's a tiny hint in the background of a little kind of strawberry, like the flesh of the strawberry as well. I'm enjoying this, and they're strikingly different to each other on the first two whiskeys.
Yeah. So that was the goal when we set out. We can't have three whiskeys that taste similar or same but different. They're all very different whiskeys, and you can blind taste them and you can clearly pull them apart. Yeah.
And for you, when people maybe go into a tasting of these whiskeys, and if you tell them it's a Madeira cask whiskey as per the name, do you think that Boann, these expressions stand out on themselves, or do you think that they are representative of how Madeira casks taste or Marsala casks taste? Even if you taste this against your 21-year-old Madeira cask, will they be of similar veins in the Madeira impression, or because there's so much mad science going on that they're
Yeah, so this one is actually a Malvasia, which is a different grape variety. So I don't have any Malvasia casks in this particular makeup. It's slightly different. Malvasia is more so medium than dry. It'd be similar enough. Like, it is quite fruity, and the minerality is a big thing for me. It's floral, but kind of different. Yeah.
No,
we should probably talk about Madeira. So basically, how they make Madeira, it's very interesting. So they used to have wine, grown in the volcanic soil, and they'd have it on the Portuguese galleons, the casks, and the Portuguese were off colonizing other parts of the world, and these casks were on the boats going over the equator, and different temperatures, being baked in the sun. So they were being like Madeirized, is actually a word based upon Madeira. So the wines were getting like heavily oxidized, like super oxidized. The thing about it is, like, this wine's 20 years old. I've opened this. If this was a Bordeaux or any red wine, it'd go off in days or a week or two. It starts to get vinegary and stuff. This will never go off because it's so heavily oxidized, and they literally last forever. They're amazing. And Madeira back in the colonial eras would have been a very famous wine. The Portuguese would have brought it everywhere. The British would have brought it everywhere. And basically now the Madeira producers, they kind of mimic what would have happened on the boats, and they put them in cellars. It's called a fumaga, I think, and they actually heat the cellars so the casks are being heated in these cellars to kind of replicate what would have happened on the boats when they were sailing around the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. So I'd urge everyone to go to Madeira and drink wine.
I'm sure a fond pastime of yours.
Yeah.
Tina in Germany is saying that she really likes this one. It's sweet whiskeys and there's so much going on. I agree. Each of these whiskeys we've tried so far have had an incredible amount going on as well. I like in this one, I'm getting kind of like a grape musk as well coming in the back, which is nice. It makes me think of the old kind of vintage style Irish whiskies from times past, which is a nice throwback as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the bottles?
Sure.
What I might do is I might pop you onto the big screen here and then let you show us the bottles there.
Good stuff. So as I was saying, this is 10 years in the making. So we had a lot of time to sit back, ponder the perversities of life and drink whiskey and, think about how we were going to present our whiskeys to the world, because we've put our heart and soul into it, basically our bottle. So the whole idea, so Boann is the name of our distillery. For those of you who don't know, she is the goddess of the Boyne River. So she's one of the Tuatha De Danann, one of the Celtic mythological figures. And legend has it that she walked around the Well of Wisdom with her shins, which means backwards. And the Well of Wisdom violently erupted, and the Boyne River flowed from the Well of Wisdom, which is actually in Newbridge and in Kildare, and flowed all the way to Drogheda, past Newgrange, where she resided at the time. So the kind of a direct translation of the Boyne River is Boann. So we've named our distillery after Boann. And we're about 10 minutes away from Newgrange, which is an amazing place. I would urge everyone to visit there. It's very magical. There's like amazing energies there. When we bring our clients there, they're all just completely blown away. And for some reason, it's always sunny, which is fantastic. You can't predict the Irish weather, but for some reason, whenever we're there, the sun's always shining, which is great. So everyone leaves, all energized and all that. So basically, we're all about the Boyne Valley. We want to root ourselves to the provenance of the land. So essentially, the bottle grows from the land and then, upwards into the whiskey. So at the base, punt is actually in the shape of Newgrange. And on the base, you can see all these kind of divots. That's actually Ogham transcript, which is an ancient transcript from 5,000 years ago, and it says Boann distilled. I know you know your own, Matt. I'm sure. Do you want to show off your tap, maybe?
The hoodie's blocking it, but my tattoo is there.
Yeah. So there's a bit of Ogham writing there, and basically, as I was saying, so everything's growing from the bottle. So we're starting with the Boyne Valley and Newgrange, and then we're growing up, and it's heavily textured. You can kind of see all these textures. So like when people see them, they think, maybe it's a flame or barley blowing in the wind. So it's quite subjective. I tell people it is barley blowing in the wind. It is Boann's hair blowing in the wind. It's the ripples on the Boyne River. It is the grain of a tree, the bark of a tree. So it's really subjective. And I suppose it depends on what kind of mood you're in and the light that you're seeing that you will determine actually what it is. I've asked lots of people what they think, and a lot of people say fire, and a lot of people say like the grain of wood. So that's good, because we didn't want it to be, simple. It's quite subjective. So everything grows up, and then into the shape of our still. So if you've ever seen our stills, this is the shape of our still with the flange, and then the straight neck, and then up here, we have our cork. Did you hear that? I spent about 5 years trying to get that right. The classic pop. Hopefully you did hear it. But it's a flange cork. And here we have more kind of ripples. This also, everything is all about flow. And on the label, you probably can't see it there, but there's like kind of embossments. And it's all about the flow of the river and Boann's hair and the flow of the grain and barley in the wind. So everything flows with this bottle. It's wonderful to hold in the hand. And then on the top, we have our kind of cartouche, which represents the moon. And we say water, land, sun, and moon. And as I was saying, everything we do is about the providence of the Boyne Valley. And we tend to align ourselves to the solstices and the equinoxes. So we've done 3 single casks, 2 winters and 1 solstice. And then we launch these in the summer solstice. We will have hopefully a winter solstice cask in our new bottle, and then we'll start to work on equinox releases. So that's our bottle. I'm very happy with it. I'm very proud of it. It took an awful lot of work. And as you know, when you're dealing, like I work in a family business, so it's not just me. There's other stakeholders, and everybody was involved, and it's sometimes difficult to bring people on the journey because everyone has different opinions. But with this, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was from the start. It just worked because we had spent so much time, and it was all about the flow, and it did just flow. Now, it took about a year and a half to get it together, but that's the bottle. So as you can see, I'm exceptionally proud of the bottle, but it's all about what's in the bottle. It's always nice to have something looking after that as well.
It flowed. It took a year and a half to get flowing, but it flowed.
Yeah. And that's how long a bottle takes. People will tell you 6 months, but realistically, it's about a year and a bit.
Having a mid-sized distillery, family business, independent business. Obviously, the Whistler and Boan ranges are known, if not for anything else, for very creative packaging. How important is it to have a designer that gets you and where you're going with that, or is it haphazard at that point?
No, it's very important. So I've worked with the same designer for 10 years. We're basically mates, and I create the whiskies, come up with the ideas, sometimes the names, and I'll give him a brief, and he'll go off and do his craziness, and we'd be just talking to each other, and it worked. It flows. Yeah, it just flows. He gets the brief. For some reason, we get each other. But I have worked with other designers, and it's just not the same. So you need a good repertoire. And who I'm talking about, David Walsh from Greenhouse. You've worked with him in the past. He's very good. He's a very good designer. Yeah.
Well, and hopefully for many more designs, he'll be elevating both Boan and the Whistler.
Hopefully he doesn't hang up the boots, because he was saying there's kind of a shelf life on ideas. I'm going what are you talking about? Surely you're going to come up with great ideas until you're 70 or 80 years old. Apparently not. So I'll have to squeeze out as many whiskies as I can between now and then.
Exactly. And does the launch of Boan spell the end of the Whistler, or are they going to be coexisting brands?
Certainly not coexisting. We're now Boan. So just to be clear, Boan, this bottle, Boan Distillery single pot still, will only ever be single pot still. It'll never be a blend. It'll never be a malt. It'll certainly never be a single grain. Whereas the Whistler will always still kind of be an independent bottler brand. But we are using our whiskies in that now. We don't have a grain facility, so we'll never have a single grain. Don't say never, but at the moment we don't have a single grain facility. And the Whistler is something that we've had a lot of fun with. The Whistler is liqueurs, cream liqueurs, honey liqueurs, blends, malts, grains, blended malts. I have about 5 new whiskies coming out in the next 12 months for the Whistler. So the Whistler is still very much so belting them out, and we'll continue to belt them out. And we've laid down an awful lot of interesting stuff, because some of the whiskies, the age-statement whiskies, they will go away. They're not repeatable. So I have lots of backup stuff to come in and keep everyone interested, and hopefully everyone will continue to wet their whistle.
Fantastic. So Tina in Germany says the bottle is so beautiful. It's really good work, but she wants to know when are the Boan whiskies making it towards Germany? The Whistler whiskies have been obviously available for a number of years.
Yeah.
Will we be seeing you at any festivals popping up with the bottles, or?
Well, and is Tina from Berlin maybe, or that kind of area?
Yes, Berlin, yeah.
You're in luck, Tina. So we will be at the Berlin Bar Convert show, and we will have our wonderful Boan whiskies there. So please do call up and say hello on our Boan Distillery stand.
Well, there you go. You'll be able to get first hand there. Now, Tina was also one of the first people to jump into the comment section saying that she was at a tasting in Cork in March to get a little sneak peek of these as well. So she had a great time tasting that. So good to see that the support is strong in Germany. So for our third and final whiskey, this is Dram number 2, Iverago or Iverdo. This is the Pedro Jimenez cask. Obviously, we've changed the order. This is definitely, I think, your favorite whiskey. I don't know, is this the number 1 selling whiskey of the range? Is there a number 1 selling whiskey of the range?
So we've only launched, 2 months ago or less. It is, you know, a lot of our importers would have purchased, you know, equal measures, a third, and a third. But now they're coming back for repeat orders, and it seems to be leaning towards this a little bit more. And you'll see now, you know, when you get your lips around this, like it's a cracker of a whiskey.
And do you think that's because, you know, the Whistler already is so strongly well known for its PX influences, or do you think it's more recognizable than the two, or is it just a big flavor bomb that's just catching people's attention?
I don't think it's anything to do with the Whistler. Once you taste it, it's nothing like. No, it has similar notes, but it's very different to the PX. I Love You whiskey. We've used very different casks for this. Pedro Jimenez, you know, it's a bit of a story. Like, I think people understand what PX is. It's the Pedro Jimenez grape. So just to talk a little bit about that wine. So right now in Montilla, which is in Andalusia in Spain, you know, probably half an hour from Cordoba or 2 hours from Jerez, and they've picked all the Pedro Jimenez grapes and they're now laying them out. It's I was speaking to somebody yesterday. It's 40 degrees in Montilla at the moment. It's quite a raised elevation. And they lay all the grapes out on mats, and the sun, it's kind of like Amarone, shrivels up the grapes, takes out the water and condenses the sugars. And then they make this wine in a traditional way on cheesecloths, where they'll lay the grapes, put a bed of straw, grapes, bed of straw, and then it's a screw press. So it's a really traditional, like, it hasn't changed in hundreds of years, the way they make it. And then they make this beautiful syrupy wine. I'm sure you've seen it over there. They'll drink it chilled, you know, from the fridge, or they'll pour it under dessert, and it's really decadent and rich and amazing. Hence, we named the Whistler PX because we love it so much. So we'll talk a little bit the makeup of this whiskey, because I did mention the casks were quite special. So this PX chestnut casks. So I stumbled upon these casks. They're from Malaga, which is down by the coast, and they were 60 years old, handmade. They didn't have machines back then. You know, some of our other casks are like 100-year-old Olorosos or 120-year-old Finos. They're big monster casks. Like, the staves are this thick, and they weigh an absolute ton. You need two people to lift them. So that's what these casks are like. And they would have been in a Solera system for 60 years, and some of them are chestnut and some of them are oak. And the chestnut is amazing because it's a very different flavor profile. And as you know, one of the things that kind of sets us apart from Scotland and other whiskey makers is, well, in Scotland, they can only use oak. They have to mature their new make in an oak barrel no greater than 700 litres. So we're similar, except the technical file of Irish whiskey says a wooden vessel, which is fantastic, because that allows us to explore other different wood types. And we do that at Boan to date. We have chestnut, mulberry, wild cherry, amberana, jacatiba, and pine, which was an absolute disaster. I had this wonderful idea that I filled new make into a pine cask. I had this idea that, you know, when you're walking through a forest in the morning time and the sun's coming up and it's going to be a nice day, and the sun hits the pine trees and it kind of melts the sap a little bit, and you get that piney resinous note. So that is something that's, you know, that flows through a lot of pot still with high barley mash bills. You get that piney resinous note. So I was going like, Jesus, that'll be a match made in heaven. So I got a pine cask made. And when it came, you could literally pick it up with your baby finger. It was so light. That's because it's so porous. So we filled it, and there's probably about 20% new make left in it. So that was one of our disasters. We don't get it right all the time. But back to the PX. So chestnut and oak. I'm going to give you the makeup of this. So it's 13%. Actually, I'm going to go back even a bit further. So the other two whiskies were essentially bourbon matured and then finished with some full maturations. This was full maturation Oloroso casks. And these casks actually were the first casks that we ever purchased about, I would say, 8 years ago. And we actually worked with the ex-master of wood called George Espy. And he was with Macallan. And we went to Jerez in Spain to source sherry casks. And we worked with another fellow called Ventura from Visima. He has since sold his cooperage to the Macallan. But George Espy and Ventura, they helped us get amazing casks, and they were actually from Garvey's. They were butts from Garvey's, a famous sherry house, and they remade them into hogsheads, which are 250 litres. And then they were the first whiskies that we made. We actually purchased stock from Cooley, 3, 5, and 8-year-old. Now, this is 8 years ago, so this is our first foray into whiskey, or one of our first forays into whiskey.
Do you want me to grab the bottles?
Oh, go for it, yeah. So we created this wonderful whiskey called the Blue Note. The 7.
It's the only one I don't have.
Do you have the cask strength?
Yeah.
There you go, 7-year-old cask strength. So that whiskey used to regularly beat the Red 12-year-old cask strength in competitions, which we were very happy about. And it was all down to the casks. Obviously, the bourbon matured whiskey was double distilled in Cooley malt, but the casks were just absolutely stellar. So we used those casks once to create the Blue Note and say the 10-year-old. Then after that, I created the Whistler Oloroso Sherry cask finish, which is our green label. And then after that, the casks came to Boan and were filled with new make 4.5 years ago. So the whiskey that went into the PX casks was full maturation Oloroso and really special Oloroso casks. You can taste it in here. But and then they would have spent a year and a bit longer in PX chestnut, so 13% PX chestnut. And they're big butts. They're about 650 litres, old, dank, woodworm on them. It doesn't affect taste of the whiskey, but they're just really old. They're like relics. And you were saying you haven't been to our maturation warehouse, but where our brewery used to be, it's some people are calling it the cellar museum because there's so many kind of old relics of amazing casks. And the old casks, they've had 60 years of PX just going in and out of the grain. And the wines are probably 17 or 18%. But when you put a spirit in there, which is about 60%, it goes deeper into the grain and just pulls all of those wine notes out. It's amazing. So that's the chestnut, 13%, then 60% oak, 10% neoc. So we add in the neoc, and we also added that into the marsala. This is the French oak. That adds a lot of structure and body to the whiskey. And then there was 3% bourbon. No full maturation in PX. So Oloroso and then finished in PX. But the next batch, we now have our PX casks coming on stream. So it will slightly change. And this is the US bottling, which I picked up today. That had some full maturation PX in it. So, the blends will evolve over time and get better. But it's hard to get better than this. It's an absolute stellar whiskey. If you all want to have a nose and a taste. Sláinte, indeed. So you have some of the dankness from those casks. Like when I was nosing those casks, they were thick to the bone with PX syrupy wine. It was amazing, but it has that dank warehouse kind of note as well. Your classic, your caramel, your nuts. You've got all your dried fruits, your raisins and figs, Christmas cake. Like you know our PX, I love you, and you have an idea of what that tastes. This is very different. Do you agree? Yeah,
absolutely. And again, even the base of the single pastel grain is still coming through, which I quite like.
Yeah.
But that old fortified wine flavor is coming through. You can't
beat it. You just can't beat it. Yeah, umami. There's a lot of umami in here. This is one of these new sense flavors that the Japanese are all about, but the Westerners only kind of discovered it in the last few decades. It's kind of got that mushroomy taste, earthy taste. Soya sauce is a classic umami profile. But we love using the old casks. They're hard to get. Like I've spent a lot of time in Spain and France and in wineries and bodegas, like striking up relationships with these wineries and just trying to source really good casks. A lot of the other larger producers, they don't really have the luxury of that because they've such large volumes that they need to be able to have repeatability, consistency, and obviously affordability. So a lot of them use seasoned casks. So say if they're using a PX seasoned cask, that would be a cask made from American oak that will be toasted and then seasoned with PX wine for maybe 18 to 24 months. Then the wine would be emptied, to be shipped to the distillery, and they'd put their new make whiskey, or they'd finish a whiskey in it. And we don't really do that. We play around with seasoned casks, but we feel you get much more depth and much more flavor from old wood casks, because they've just had so many years. And it is hard to consistently to make it repeatable, because some of these, like these chestnut casks, they're like hen's teeth. You know, they're very hard to find, but they're out there. So I'm kind of like barrel hunting at the moment. I've got to get back over to Andalusia, visit these dusty old danky warehouses, and, you know, drink wine with the locals and strike up deals where I can get my hands on these amazing casks. Yeah, so I love this whiskey, and, you know, we love PX. So the PX was always going to be a runner for Boan.
And that makes sense. Do you think that it's the flavor or the name? Come back to my question before, if this is the top seller so far, what do you think?
I think the flavor, like, you know, people in the whiskey world, they would know what Madeira is, I would imagine. So they most certainly know what PX is, because a lot of scotches and stuff like that would finish casks in PX. Marsala maybe not so much, but they're three classic fortified wines. You know, one from Sicily, one from the island of Madeira, and one from Andalusia in Spain. So I would imagine people do know what they are, but like, we love telling the story of how the wine is made, and, you know, where it's made, and the producers, where the casks come from. It's quite sweet. You know, the Americans are going to love this, and the Australians are going to love this. Anywhere with a sweet palate is most certainly going to love it. The Europeans tend to be into their drier style whiskies. I don't know. They like dry, like the French, they like dry wines and whatnot. So maybe the Marsala will be more for them. But certainly for the people that like have a little bit of a sweet tooth, this is your whiskey, 100%.
And are they all at that sub €60 price point?
Yeah, price line, so $59.95. Available on Irish Malts and bowendistillery.ie. And I would like to say all good leading off licenses around the country. And for those internationals, we're in 30 markets around the world. Hopefully by, you know, 6 months or so, we should be in 60 markets around the world. So hopefully we'll be coming to a town near you. But you can always buy from Irish Malts do ship globally as well, don't they?
Yeah. Where it's legal to receive alcohol, you can get your alcohol. So there's some strange places in the United States that don't let you ship alcohol into, because they're a dry county. You can't get it there, but if you have a neighbor in the county over, you say nothing, we'll say nothing.
So if I have a friend in Mozambique, can you get a bottle to him?
If it's not illegal to ship alcohol into Mozambique, then absolutely, yeah.
Okay, good.
There you go. Global shipment. I think the only country we're not covering is North Korea. So it's if a plane, train, or automobile goes there, you can get your Irish whiskey shipped directly to the door. So hopefully all good Boan whiskeys. And if Peter, if someone is watching now, it's their first time experiencing whiskey from Boan Distillery, they're going to pick up a bottle of this, but they're thinking to themselves, you know what? Maybe I'll pick up a Whistler too, because I haven't had much experience with the Whistler. You've got someone buy a bottle of this. What Whistler should they buy to complement, to learn about the portfolio? What do you think is a great first foray into the Whistler?
It's a tough one because they're all my babies, but I do have a favorite. The 10-year-old French Oak for me is just an absolute gorgeous whiskey. I love it, and it's quite dry. You know, we use these Neoc casks, 8 years in bourbon, 2 years plus in these French Oak casks, and it's so fruity. It's just an amazing whiskey. It's gorgeous. There's nothing like it out there. So if you want an introduction to the Whistler and you know your whiskeys, it's a 10-year-old single malt. I would say the Whistler 10-year-old French Oak. Absolutely pick that up. And then pick up all three Boan single pot stills.
Exactly.
If you have any spare cash, pick up this baby, the 21-year-old Madeira.
There you go. Before we go, Whiskey Kev has been asking, are Neocs always European oak? And I know that the Neocs definitely have an American oak equivalent. Do you want to speak about that for a second?
Yeah, so they can be anything. It's the process. So it's called New Era of Oak Cask. So essentially, they're taking a cask and they're rejuvenating it. So they're giving it a new lease of life. So predominantly, the ones we use are from Bordeaux, and they're from Premier Cru Classé wineries such as Chateaumout and Rothschild. So really high end wineries. They tend, those particular casks come from a forest called Forêt de Tronçais, and they're about 200 years old. It's very similar to Irish oak. You know, the native Irish oak is Quercus petraea. So the same style of tree grows in that forest. We also have some Neox coming from Burgundy. So that'll be a different style. We have another product called the Whistler Dark Symphony. That's even more detailed, where we have our bespoke cask called a Dark Symphony cask. And they're essentially bourbon casks that went to cognac for the making of a product by Martell called Blue Swift. And then we do the Neoc process on that. So with that cask, you're getting the Virgin America notes and then the sweet cognac fruity notes. So there's a lot you can play around with. But it's similar to Esture, which is called Shave Toast Rechar, except we don't char. Our spirit is very clean. It doesn't need cleaning up. So we just do a long toast. But these kind of rejuvenated casks, they're becoming a lot more popular because the price of bourbon is going up. Casks are becoming scarce. All these new distilleries are gobbling up a lot of casks. So Europe has a huge amount of barrels that just go for making wood chips or flower pots, and it's sinful. So I'm delighted to be able to take some of them and give them a new lease of life. They have a lot to offer because they've had wines that are, 13, 14%. The alcohols can only go so far, but when you, as I was saying previously, when you put a 60% spirit in there, it goes much deeper, and you can take an awful lot from the wood. So that's the story of the Neox.
Well, fantastic. I appreciate it. So this has been the Boan single pot stills. I'll just bring up, this was Dram number 1. This was the Marsala cask. We jumped to Dram 3 for the Madeira cask. And then for the Crescendo, we had the Pedro Jimenez cask, all at 47% ABV, all at 59.95, if I'm not mistaken. Fushka Kev says, thanks for that answer. It is perfect. Peter, you are one of the co-founders of Boan Distillery. If they want to find out more about Boan Distillery, I presume they can look up boandistillery.ie.
Yep. Insta, Boan Distillery. Facebook, Boan Distillery. X, Boan Distillery. TikTok, I believe. I'm not on TikTok, but apparently we have a TikTok account. It's very easy to find us. Google will send you in the right direction.
Perfect. And for those wishing to visit Boan Distillery next year, supposedly,
I haven't seen that for a few years, but hopefully.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that since at least 2018, I've been hearing next year is.
But we're concentrating on the important stuff, which is making great whiskey. And once we have that all done, which we kind of do, we've done a little bit for our visitor center, so we're edging slowly but surely. But when we open, we don't want to do it half-assed. We want to do it with a big bang. So you'll certainly hear about it when it does happen.
Perfect. Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time. To everyone in the comments section, thank you so much for tasting along. To those of you who are joining us after the fact and tasting along in a different time, I hope you very much enjoyed yourself. I'm seeing a lot of people jumping in different comment sections here, letting us know their favorites. 3, 2, 1 seems to be the favorites for this evening and how we've drank them. So the PX, the Madeira, and then the Marsala seems to be the winning. But of course, this is all people's personal tastes. There are a lot of people saying they're looking forward to visiting the distillery. So I'm sure when that opens, it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you to you guys watching at home. Thank you to the Irish Malts and 3 Drams team for putting this together. For everyone watching back after the fact, huge thank you to you. And Peter, thank you so much for your time, because I know not only were you bottling today, you also have an event on the distillery this evening that you have stepped out from to talk to us. So a huge thank you to you. To everyone, thank you very much and good night.
See you, folks. Launch it.